going 5 miles a second, you can look down and gently see the Earth go by from a viewpoint that is very unique, exciting every single time. To look out the window and watch a sunrise or a sunset, it was spectacular.
This is First Person. Welcome to this week's conversation. I'm Wayne Shepherd, and in a moment we'll be talking with former Space Shuttle Commander Dom Gorie, now retired, who will tell us about his flying career and his testimony of faith in Christ. You can learn more about our guests each week through our online presence. We have both a website and a Facebook page for First Person. We'd welcome you to visit either one. The website is firstpersoninterview.com, where you can stream any past interview and see others on the upcoming schedule. And on Facebook, you can read the comments of other listeners and leave your own. Go to facebook.com/firstpersoninterview. Once again, facebook.com/firstpersoninterview. Also, our smartphone app is now available as well for both iPhone and Android devices. Look for First Person Interview in your app store for an easy way to listen each week. Well, a mutual friend and first-person listener introduced me to our guest today, astronaut Dom Gorie, who flew on 4 space shuttle missions, 2 as commander. Now retired, Captain Gorie lives in Colorado, and he agreed to join me on the phone, and we began by talking about his early career.
Well, I went to the Naval Academy primarily to fly. I knew I wanted to be a pilot, and I thought they had the best pilots having to fly off aircraft carriers. And also went up there because they had a great wrestling team, and I was still interested in doing that in college. So I got out in 1979 and started flying and got into carrier jets, A-7s and F-18s from the very beginning, and then one of my subsequent tours was as a test pilot, which sort of gave me the credentials to apply to NASA.
Yeah, I got to stop you there because you just so casually stated that you had a lot of carrier experience. So you were the guy that was flying those planes onto those decks and being caught by a big rubber band, huh?
So yeah, flying around the ship is about the most exciting type of flying I think there is. Landing on a carrier is more difficult than often many of the other things you do, whether you're dogfighting or bombing or running low levels, but a carrier is pretty wild.
I cannot imagine what that must be like. All right, combat experience?
Did Desert Storm with the squadron off the Roosevelt. We were there as that hostility commenced, and so there was a lot of flying over Iraq and Kuwait with that war.
Yeah. You mentioned that you became a test pilot. Talk about that experience, and I mean, are you just you're in experimental mode all the time?
As a test pilot, you get to operate and evaluate airplane modifications and new airplanes and new systems. It was an opportunity to be an intellectual pilot, and I thought that was a really great choice to pursue aviation from a more technical perspective. But it was really exciting. There was some flying going on as a test pilot that really made you be at the top of your game, and so that was a pretty exciting couple of years.
Yeah. Any moments that caused you a little concern?
There was a few that made you a little bit nervous when you look back at it. During the time, of course, when you have an engine have a problem at a high altitude or a high speed or a failure or something breaking when you're taking it to a close to a limit, it was pretty exciting. But I did have a couple of times where, specifically in the F-18, when at high speed and when the flight control systems locked up, made me a little bit nervous afterwards.
A few apprehensive moments, huh?
That's
to say the least, right. Well, again, it's remarkable, the career that God has given you. I want to talk about your NASA experience and flying the shuttle, of course. But before we get to that, time out from your career for a moment to talk about the Lord. When did you begin to follow Christ?
As a young boy, our family was always in church. We were, a Catholic family that were quite dedicated to weekly attendance, but as in a lot of Catholics, the view of salvation wasn't quite as clear as it came later on in life, there was always sort of an unknown factor that made you uneasy with your faith. There was not a clear picture of salvation, and it wasn't until later in life, as an adult, that it became so clear just to simply read the book of John that it so clearly tells us the path to salvation and how simple it is. It might not be easy, but it certainly is simple with John 3:16.
Well, it is amazing how the Lord leads, and He certainly has blessed your career, now retired, but it's been a remarkable life already. Tell me about your wife and family.
Well, my wife and I have been married for almost, within a couple months here, 35 years. We've got two wonderful kids that are now adults. Our daughter just had our first grandchild about 10 months ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Which is really exciting. We had everybody here for Christmas. So with this little girl, Eliana Grace, crawling around, it was really maybe the most enjoyable Christmas we've had. And our son is graduated from the Naval Academy a couple years ago and is as active duty with the Navy. So we are really fortunate with our kids. Our daughter's married to a young man who's almost finished with seminary. He's at Gordon Cromwell, and so we couldn't be happier with our family. We're just truly blessed, and my wife is to hang it through, a Navy career and a NASA career has seen a lot of stress from that perspective, and it's still with me. So that's a wonderful thing.
Let me take you back for a moment to your time on the Coral Sea, that carrier. Your shipmate was my friend Brad Meter, who put us together for this conversation. Talk about what it meant to have a man like that and other men, I'm sure, to fellowship with when you're in such close quarters and, there has to be some stress involved.
To go on a deployment for 5, 6, 7, in this case 8 months, is a stressful thing, and if you have somebody that is a true friend to be with as a partner on that, I was really fortunate. So Brad and I shared a stateroom with the catapult number 1 running through our room.
Now, you have to explain what that means.
So on the top of an aircraft carrier, you've got several catapults that launch an airplane from 0 to 175 miles an hour in a couple seconds, and the track for that catapult went through our room. It had a housing around it, but when it fired, the room literally shook like somebody would grab your shoulders and violently shake you, and the noise was pretty incredible.
So you knew every time a plane took off from that carrier.
It was you weren't sleeping through it, that's for sure. But Brad was a wonderful friend, and during that course of that deployment, we got to be just very, very close. And he asked me one time, early, I think, in the deployment about my faith. And at first I was a little bit taken aback because I felt that I was, fairly confident and strong in that. But when he asked a simple question about salvation, and I didn't have a very clear answer, he reacted just very wonderfully and just said, "Hey, why don't you pull out your Bible and just read the book of John, and then we'll talk." And so as I did that, and the clarity of it struck me like I had never read it before, and it was a remarkable transformation and a clarity of how simple salvation was to us. And I will always appreciate that of Brad.
That's a wonderful story, a gentle witness. That's great. Tell me about the transition to NASA. Did you always aim at being an astronaut?
Well, Wayne, I think I can't imagine a little boy not looking at airplanes and being fascinated, and I can't imagine a little boy looking at the Apollo space flights and not thinking about that like we often think about being a sports guy, like pitching in the World Series or playing in the Super Bowl. And that's how I thought of being an astronaut, that was something for, that was way out there, a really exciting thing, but not something that a boy from a small town could ever realistically dream of doing. And it wasn't until becoming the test pilot that that was the last requirement to apply to be an astronaut pilot. And so when I did that, it was naturally the next step to make that application. But never did I think that was going to work out. It was just too far out of it, a dreamlike kind of job.
We'll continue talking with Captain Dom Gorie. He'll talk about flying the space shuttle coming up on First Person. This weekly program is produced in cooperation with the Far East Broadcasting Company. Together, we are committed to telling the stories of Christ at work in the nations of the world. FEBC broadcasts the gospel in nearly 50 of those countries, reaching people in over 100 languages, introducing them to God's love and discipling them through God's Word. To learn more about FEBC and its broadcasts, please visit firstpersoninterview.com and click the banner FEBC. That's firstpersoninterview.com. I'm Wayne Shepherd, and my first-person guest today is Captain Dominic Gorie, U.S. Navy retired. He flew 4 shuttle missions, and yes, space shuttle missions, so he's had a unique experience. That's quite an exclusive club of people you belong to there, Dom.
Well, yeah, I think when we first got hired into our astronaut class, there had been on the order of 70 or 80 people that had flown in space, so it was pretty unique. And quite a different kind of job than most people get to have.
You flew 4 missions. I understand, was it 2 as pilot and 2 as mission commander?
Right. And early on in the space program, they came up with some terms that were a little bit unique. Nobody really wanted to be called co-pilot and pilot, so they came up with pilot and commander, and the pilot is really the co-pilot of the flight. And if you are a pilot astronaut, you will fly your first flight or 2 as the pilot, or in essence, co-pilot. And if you don't mess it up too badly, they'll give you the opportunity to fly as a commander, and I got to do that 2 times as well. Can
words begin to describe the feeling of rocketing off that pad for the first time?
I don't think so. I mean, you can do your best if you try to narrate a film or a movie that was taken from inside the cockpit. But even that doesn't grasp the power and strength of a couple solid rocket boosters literally shaking 5 million pounds of a launch vehicle off the launch pad. But it's a feeling and a sensation that is unlike anything you've ever experienced. So it's powerful.
Yeah. And then once you're in space, I mean, I know you have a long to-do list up there, but do you ever just stop and gawk out the window?
There were opportunities every day to maybe finish your work a little bit early or pause at the window and take in the view of creation floating by. And it is sort of a floating sensation, even though you're going 5 miles a second. You can look down and gently see the Earth go by from a viewpoint that is very unique, and it was exciting every single time. I think the opportunity, even at night, right before you went to bed, to look out the window and maybe turn out the lights and watch a sunrise or a sunset, it was spectacular.
Yeah. Again, an undescribable feeling, I'm sure. Talk about the missions. What generally was accomplished on those missions?
They were very unique, Wayne. The first flight I did, we went up to the Russian space station, and we brought back an American astronaut who had been up there for several months. And then I did a flight where we did a radar mapping mission of the entire Earth from about 60 degrees north to 60 degrees south, and, so almost to the Arctic circles.
So when we use online mapping, is that because of your work?
That the database, right, for that radar mapping generated a 3-dimensional map of the Earth that's the basis for the most accurate maps that we have, including Google Earth. And when you see the mountain perspectives, and you can play with your computer and go down into the 3-dimensional aspects of the terrain, that accurate database came from that radar mapping mission. And then the third and fourth flights I flew as a commander were to the International Space Station, and we brought up cargo and experiments and supplies and large space station hardware, like a new laboratory from Japan. we would bring back and trade out crews that were going up and coming back from long-duration flights.
What you and those with you on those shuttle missions did is remarkable. There's no question about that. But for those who spend months on that International Space Station, that has to be just a unique and trying experience, I would think. What do they say about it when you take them off that thing in space?
I think what they really enjoy is getting back to normal living, experience the beauty and the comfort of home. When you're in space, you have this unbelievable perspective of the Earth, and it takes a couple months. I usually hear that to really get comfortable with floating and working and operating in zero gravity. But for us, as the space shuttle crews, our missions were only up to 2.5 weeks long. You were up there just long enough to start to get comfortable, but you were still sort of a bull in a china shop oftentimes, and it took a while to get comfortable with that operating environment.
Did your training really prepare you? I mean, for instance, in weightlessness, did it really compare to the experience itself?
You could never really prepare yourself for the uniqueness of being in zero G. The small little things about eating and sleeping and basic hygiene, you just had to get there and experience, no matter how many times an experienced astronaut would tell you about it, that you had to get up there and lose your sock or a pen or your spoon and figure out how to deal with that. But the training for the job, the robotics, the spacewalks, the rendezvous and launch and landing, we had excellent simulators. The training for that was really, really good. But you had to be there to experience the beauty of it and the small little challenging parts of it.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the robotics. I just had a conversation with a Christian brother who was in charge of the robotics lab at NASA in Houston for many years, and he'll be coming up soon on this program to talk about that experience. James Wong is his name. Captain, you flew the first shuttle after 9/11. Do you remember what you said on the launch?
There was a couple times where you had to, as a commander, you had to make a little bit of a speech right before liftoff, and I remember, I think on that flight, referring to the strong country that we have, and that it was time to, I think in the words I used was let freedom roar.
Yes.
We talked about how freedom rings, loud and clear in our country, but what was unique there was a very clear message to the country, certainly to the folks in NASA, that we were going to persevere no matter what we were faced with because of the uniqueness of our country.
Yeah, I have the exact quote right in front of me, if I may. You said, "We're all aware that for over 200 years, and certainly over the last 2 months, freedom rings loud and clear across the country. But right here and right now, it's time to let freedom roar." And you hit the start button, huh?
And then right after that, within a couple minutes, you're off the ground. But it does truly roar. And for the people that were fortunate to be on the ground and watch that, it's a powerful, often life-changing experience when you feel the sound waves come across the water at the Cape. But it was a unique time. We were flying some flags that had been in the rubble of 9/11. It was a unique opportunity to regain, I think, our footing for the country.
If I have my chronology correct, I believe you flew both before and after Columbia. Is that right?
That is true. Yes, the flight after Columbia was maybe the toughest for all the NASA families. Of course, the danger and rigors of spaceflight were demonstrated by the loss of Columbia and that crew, and I was very close with those folks. But that was a tough time for every family that chose to fly again. The risks were very clear, and forced a lot of soul searching and praying and discussions, of course.
I understand you played a key role in the aftermath of the Columbia explosion.
Right. After we lost Columbia, I was asked to go to a small town in Texas and help and coordinate this search effort. And we had another astronaut that coordinated the search for the crew remains, and then I was running the search for the material of Columbia, and we ended up searching a couple million acres of Texas to bring back what in the end result was about 39% of the mass of Columbia, and with that we were able to reconstruct the vehicle and focus on what the cause of the accident was, and only because of that were we able to fix it and press on to fly again. So that was a very unique time frame with people from all around the world and the country, of course, searching literally 5 or 6 feet apart for hundreds of miles to pick up small pieces.
Well, again, thank you for your service to our country, and especially during that tragic time. Captain, looking back on such a career as you've had, talk about how the Lord has led you and directed your path. I understand you took a Bible on the missions with you.
I think it was right after got off the Coral Sea with Brad, and I went out and got a new Bible that has seen a couple different covers, but on each flight I would take that and have an opportunity with it sitting next to the seat that I occupied on the shuttle, and you always had the opportunity to pull that out and read and draw clarity and comfort from that. I remember especially one time on Easter Sunday having it there, and it was just a wonderful time to reflect on the beauty of the gospel. So from that kind of seat, to see and read about the glory of our creation was an awesome memory. So that Bible they actually have a couple stamps like at a post office on board the space station, and they'll document like a passport, something that you want to record the moment. And so I've got a couple stamps on there from the Russian space station as well as the International Space Station.
My thanks to astronaut Dom Gorie for sharing his story with us today. We'll put additional information about Captain Gorie on our webpage, firstpersoninterview.com. That's firstpersoninterview.com. Our partner in bringing these stories to you each week is the Far East Broadcasting Company. FEBC's gospel-centered broadcasts are heard in many countries, including China, Russia, Korea, Japan, and the Philippines, just to name a few, and listeners respond warmly to hearing of God's love and offer of salvation. Plus, they are discipled in the Word. Learn more about FEBC when you visit our website, firstpersoninterview.com. Just click on the FEBC banner at firstpersoninterview.com. And don't forget to download our First Person smartphone app available in the Apple and Google Play stores. Next week, we'll talk with Ken Isaacs of Samaritan's Purse, who's leading refugee and emergency relief efforts in many countries. Ken's story started with the drilling of a water well in North Carolina. You'll hear it next time. Now, with thanks to my friend and producer Joe Carlson, I'm Wayne Shepherd. Join us next time for First Person.